So are you ready to rise up and feel our power? Spirit's time has come. Do you feel that? Do you know it? Well, before we get started, maybe we could just put number 11 just down a tiny bit. I might be a little loud. Thank you. So, I wanted to start with that song because this is about your power. This is Spirit's time has come. It's our time has come. And if anything at the end of this talk, I want you to feel like you can walk out that door and do something you wanted to do. Take a chance. Be vulnerable. Do something that is going to change your life. If just for a moment. If just it opens that door a tiny bit through the possibility of change. So before we get started, I wanted to tell you a story about one of my little nephews, and actually I'd heard this from someone else as well, but I thought, oh, you know what, this is cute, I'm going to borrow it. So my nephew Emmett came home, and I happened to be over at his mom's place, and brought in his report card, and it was 3 or 4 A's and a couple of B's. And my niece went, oh, and she said, that's a really great report card. You must be near the top of your class. And he said, well, no, that's Mark. And she said, oh. And she said, well, she said, good for Mark. And then she said, what do you think you'd need to do to maybe be top of your class? Like what? And she thought this was encouraging him, that he was gonna, say a little effort or study a bit more. And Emmett thought about it for a while, and then he came back and said, get rid of Mark. So that's a belief in scarcity, right? That there's only so many Marks to go around. Not double pun there, didn't mean to do that. But so what do? So we've been talking all this month about vulnerability. And I know it seems like sticking a finger in a wound to some of us. And we're like, why are we doing this? Why do we keep looking at this stuff? Why do I have to go back and look at what scares me and what is coming up for me? It's because that's the exact thing that's stopping you from having what you want. It's the exact thing that is stopping you from the love you want, the abundance you want, the creativity you want, the community you want, the world you want. Think about that for a moment. So we do treatments, we do affirmations, and what's the first thing that kind of comes up for people when we do this? They say, oh, you know what, every time I say I'm lovable, I'm beautiful, I think, no, I'm not. I got this going on, I got that going on, why would anybody? And we say, keep saying the affirmations, because that'll help get the subconscious to let go of that thought. But sometimes we need to stop and say, where did that come from? Why do I believe that? And we have to say it about every part of our lives, and that's what is so amazing about this teaching, is it doesn't say turn away from those labels and those ideas and those constructs that we try to live our lives by. It says challenge them. Challenge them. We don't have to live by other people's rules or ideas of how things are done. And every generation that tries to do anything different, the old generation tells them how they're doing it wrong because they're not doing it the way they did it. I mean, I remember when spanking went out, and I remember choosing not to spank my kids. And I had older siblings, quite a bit older, and I had other people in the family that said to me, well, just see what you end up with. You're gonna end up with a spoiled little brat, you're gonna end up, and at that time, part of me was like, oh, I'm not doing what was done with me, or I'm not doing what other people did. Maybe I'm doing this wrong, and I started to doubt myself. But I had to put that away because I had committed to my decision, and I'm really happy I did. But what constructs are you living up to? Your house has to be a particular way. Your couch has to be against the wall with a picture, 2 feet above it? Why can't you move your couch to the middle of the room? Heck, why can't you move your bed down to your living room? If that's what you enjoy, if you love that space, why not? We've got to challenge constructs. We have to look at why we live to them. Why we try to live up to something that isn't us. And that can make us vulnerable. If we're not the type of parent someone else is, if we don't do things with our children that other people did, if we don't keep our house the way other people did, if we don't do the job that somebody thinks is valuable, how do we know we're still valuable? Where does looking at vulnerability in these situations give us the power? Because if we know ourselves, and we know our own truth, and we're authentic, that can't touch us. It can't touch us. If an immaculate home is not who I am, people come in, or I hear people saying, oh, well, you should see her fridge. You know, it looks like she hasn't cleaned that out in a couple of weeks. I don't care. I had fun. I was out in my garden, or I was swimming, or I was out visiting people. I was doing something I enjoy. So it can't hurt me. I just let that go. So what is it that you're hiding, or protecting, or trying to live up to, that if you let it go, oh, how much power would come in? How many manifestations you could do? How many intentions you could set and see happen? And how much energy would you have to help your own community? Right? Because we're spending all this energy trying to live up to these ideals that we didn't even put in place. And can you imagine if you could let that go? If you could let those thoughts go? We all have 3 thoughts. They say people have 3 thoughts that continually run through their head every day. All day. We're not even aware. It's like this little background tape that's happening. 3. Change one of them. Get rid of one of them, because chances are they're not positive. They are either a criticism, an idea about scarcity, or critical. So Brene Brown, who we've been quoting a lot the last month, and who is a sociological study or investigator on things like vulnerability and shame, says that when we have a vulnerability that gets triggered, there's 3 chairs that show up. I was going to pull up 3 chairs, but I forgot. So there is scarcity, criticism, and having a little brain thing there. Scarcity, criticism, and see, I'm doing so well at getting rid of them, I can't even remember it. Scarcity, criticism, and shame. Oh, forgot shame. Shame on me. So those 3 chairs. So chances are, somebody comes up with an idea, they're going to hear one of those 3 statements. They're going to be criticized for it. They're going to feel shame for suggesting something that maybe nobody else supported. Or they're going to think, or people are going to tell them there's not enough money to do it. Or there's not enough people to do it. Or there's not something, there's scarcity. Right? We do the same with ourselves. We set these wonderful intentions, and those 3 things, or one of those 3 things, will pop into our head. So I just wanted to give an example of how this might look in a life. So you want to change your career. What chair might be activated?
Scarcity.
Scarcity could be one, or
Finances.
yeah, or criticism, right? So was a winery. I went on a wine tour in the Okanagan last year, and there was this winery we went to, and it was good wine. And we were sitting in there, and the person said it was actually started by a stockbroker, very successful stockbroker. And him and his wife made wine in their garage and in their basement, and they just loved it. And anyway, they decided to take all their money, start a winery. And so they had their friends and family over, they were letting them taste their wine, and told him of the plans. And one of the people criticized and said, well, you better be good at this, or you're going to be the laughingstock of your business. So what did they do? They used that criticism as the name for their company. So they're laughingstock wineries. And all of their wines are named after puns from the stock market, and they're very successful. So there's an opportunity to take something that maybe would cut somebody off at the knees and stop them. Didn't. They used it. They used the criticism. They took the vulnerability and they claimed it. They said, we're going to call ourselves that before you can. Right? Just think of something in your life that someone's holding over you, or that you're holding over yourself. How much freedom would it be to say, yeah, you know what? I did that. I messed up that way. Or that was a choice I made and I failed. I own that. I tried. The freedom that gives you, the absolute freedom. And when you get the freedom, the power shows up. All of a sudden, everything's flowing. You have an intention, you're open to it, that fear of that thing coming out disappears, and it flows. It absolutely flows, because we know the universe always says yes. The only thing that stops us is our fears and our ideas. So, my second example, entering a market that does not have customers wanting your product. So, business wants to enter into a market, this would be scarcity. Starbucks. Starbucks decided they were going to enter the Chinese market. No coffee maker went into the Chinese market because they said it was ridiculous. They're tea drinkers. They don't drink coffee. So Starbucks thought about this. There was an increasing middle class. They knew they had a product that if they could get it in there, people would enjoy. So they looked at their vulnerability, knowing that they didn't have the product that a lot of Chinese people drink. They thought about it. What they came up with was, they bet that the Chinese market would be interested in having a place to go between work and home. They didn't have a place that was like a home with couches and places to relax and visit between work and home. It didn't exist in China. They opened up the shops. Absolutely, the Chinese came. They absolutely loved having this place to relax and enjoy themselves. And their coffee sales went through the roof. I forget the last count. There was over 1,000 some Starbucks in China. Foothold in before anyone else. That was using a vulnerability and saying, okay, we know this. How can we overcome it? How can we turn this into a power? How can we make this work? And my last example for this is grade 7 junior high dance. And it's girls' choice. And you cross the floor, because you know the boys always lined up on one side and the girls on the other. And you walked across and you asked a boy to dance. And he said no. And everyone saw it. So you start to walk back, music's playing, and you make a choice. And you do the hustle all the way back to your seat. Everybody laughs. You turned a vulnerability into a moment of triumph. Because everybody knows what that feels like. Everybody knows the nerve it takes to cross the room to do something. Everybody. And to be rejected. But they honor that fortitude. And when you take it and you say, yeah, that happened to me. I know you're watching, so I'm going to make the most of it. And you dance back. And that's what I want for everyone here and who's listening on Zoom, is to take those moments where we fall down and we fail and we're wondering what the heck we can do. We use it, we say, hey, look, this is what happened. This is me. But you better be sure next time that little boy's gonna say yes, or that business is gonna say yes, or my idea is gonna flow. I mean, how many times have we looked at products on the market and we've gone, really? Somebody wants to buy that? I remember the patty stacker. My mom was completely thrown by the patty stacker. It was a K-tel thing. It was like a tube, and you put your hamburger in it and a piece of paper, and you plunged it down, and another piece of meat and a piece of paper, and plunged it down. And my mom, she said, well, what's wrong with just doing this? Like, just back and forth in the hands. She thought it was crazy. They sold millions. They made a fortune off of this because somebody was willing to be vulnerable and give it a try. So vulnerability is not a negative thing. It lets you pinpoint those things that are stopping you and figuring out how to change it, how to move it through. So how do we as individuals and a community harness the power of authenticity, possibility, and transformation? Those are the three chairs that I want to replace the others with. So, authentic power. Who are we? What do we stand for? Right? Who are we truly when we strip everything away? Yeah. We present ourselves, right? In every act, when we meet people, we interact, we're saying who we are. Now, we could go around using fancy words like mental equivalent, divine resonance, pure potentiality, for very simple things. Spirit moving through us. You can do anything you want. You just have to go for it. You just have to know it's yours. You just have to get rid of the vulnerability. So we can look at any situation, even here as a community, as long as we're ready to get vulnerable. As long as we're ready to say, you know what? I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm sure I'm bored for anybody that's got an idea. And support each other. If we're going to come up with something, if we're thinking about something isn't working, come up with an answer, a suggestion. All of those things are so valuable, as long as they're authentic. And before we say those things, we've got to think, why are we? What is the point of this? Is it going to be valuable? Is it truthful? Is it going to change things? And anytime that happens, there might be a tiny delay, but it's going to be received in a really good way. So I would just like to go over the 10 points that Brené Brown mentions for success, and I'm going to kind of give a science of mind equivalent, if you would say, to her suggestions. So her one is show up. My answer to that is take a class, see a practitioner, set an intention, volunteer, walk the walk, show up. We're a place that's safe for everybody. Stand up and say that. Show up for that. Make sure that when you're out, you challenge anyone that challenges what we believe, or you leave. You say, I'm sorry, I can't be part of this. It's uncomfortable. It can be, I know when I do it, my heart's going a million miles an hour, but I always feel better when I crawl into bed at night knowing I did it. I knew I was true to myself and I was authentic. When you take a class, you learn so much about yourself and your vulnerabilities and ways to overcome it and the tools that you can use to overcome these things. See a practitioner. They'll help you find those vulnerabilities. They'll help you find what you're thinking and get rid of it. They'll know for you that isn't true until you're ready to know it for yourself. Cultivate authenticity. What ideas about yourself are you holding on to that do not apply anymore? Gary Zukov said, seeing your thoughts as you, getting separation. And what he was talking about here is how many times you get in an argument and you have a particular point of view. And someone says, well, you know what? I don't feel that way about it. And instantly you feel like somebody's just punched you in the stomach. So you double down on your idea. You start giving them all the reasons why you're correct. And you feel your emotions getting the best of you. What is happening in that situation is the ego is attached to that belief system. That idea that you're putting forward, it's not you. That belief is not you. It's just a thought you're holding. And if you can take a breath and get the awareness that you as an individual is not that thought, then you're less likely to react. You're more calm. You can use your frontal cortex and make a better decision, or you can walk away. But that's a really wonderful thing that, again, we learn in our classes, and a lot of the time is covered in our Sunday talks. Set boundaries. What do we teach? Self-care. Set intentions and stick to them. So if you set an intention to be a particular way, or to see the world in a particular way, protect that. Set your boundaries. If somebody said, oh, well, I don't really believe in that, I think that's just a bunch of positive thinking and it really doesn't come up. Protect yourself. Walk away from it. Just say, well, thank you for your opinion. Get out. Set your boundaries. Know what you'll allow someone to say to you. Actively practice gratitude. We teach gratitude all the time. Do gratitude journals. We say thank you. It's part of every treatment we do. 4th step or 6th step, depending which one you're doing the spiritual mind treatment, is always gratitude. 5, embrace vulnerability. When you're struggling, know that you are close to a spiritual upgrade is ours. So the practice will always say, this keeps showing up, and I've been working at it, and I've set my intention, and everything's just sort of seemed to go crazy. And what do we say? Yeah, and you're close to the upgrade. You're close to the next form of consciousness. You're raising your frequency. You're challenging yourself. No practitioner is going to tell you that anything is smooth, or anyone that's taken a class, that anything is smooth when you're trying to do this work. Things come up. And that's the beauty of it. Know that means you're progressing. Know that means you're alive. 6, let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism is control. It's just merely showing everyone else, I've got this all perfect. Therefore, I'm perfect and nothing can hurt me. Not true. It's just a mask. And women are very much for this. We have this mask that we're continually trying to do, and everything's behind the scenes is falling. And we're desperate. And we're running around trying to please everyone. And that means we miss the self-care. So, letting go of judgment about yourself and others. Destroying constructs, which I mentioned before. Knowing that you have spirit to handle everything. So here's a quote that I love this with letting go of perfectionism. The sweetness of living comes to us when the very humanism we regret and try to hide, or seeming flaws and shameful secrets, are worked by time and nature into a honey all their own. So when we let things fall and we realize nothing happened, it's okay. Somebody came over and I had dishes in my sink. It's okay, right? I forgot somebody's birthday. I forgot, call my child today. Whatever it is, just let it go. It's just, can't believe I did this. Let it go. Call them up. Change something. But it can turn into a freedom when we finally let go of these things. Oh my gosh, do we have energy for other stuff? For the stuff we really want out of this lifetime. As I've always said to my family, my gosh, if anybody gets up at my celebration of life and says she had a beautifully clean house, kill me a second time, because that would just, that is not what I want said in my final day. 7, explore your emotions. This is Brene Brown's idea. So, how do we explore our emotions? Meditation, classes, treatment, reflection, visioning. All of those do that. Build shame resilience. Our mistakes are not who we are. Do treatment. Something comes up, you want to find surefire shame. If something comes up that you're shamed about, do treatment. State the positive in these situations and then make amends. But do treatment first. Because sometimes we feel shame out of things we shouldn't even feel shame out of. Sometimes it's setting a boundary. Sometimes it's just expressing ourselves. And we feel shame because it wasn't received well. So I always say do treatment, spend some time with it before you run to apologists, because that might not be at all what the situation is. Risk failures, number 9. If you're not trying, you are not growing. So risk failure. I can't tell you how many times I failed. Failed up here, failed at the computer, failed with Ian's name last night. I have no idea why I wrote that down. But own it, right? We're human. We do human things. Risk failure, because that's how we grow. I know so many things I never knew. I built a website. Never done that before. I have done so many things because we took a chance. We tried something. That's the only way we grow. It's absolutely the only way we grow. And don't have regrets. Please do not regret one failure you made in your life, because you wouldn't be who you are. Don't regret a relationship. Don't regret a job. Don't regret a choice. Don't regret the trip that didn't work out. Don't regret any of it. Because if any one part of that did not happen, you would not be here. You would not be who you are. And you would not be loved the way you love you. All those things had to happen. And they're wonderful because you learned and you have empathy and you can look at someone else who's had that similar problem and you can look at them in the eyes and go, me too. That happened to me too. So those are the 10 steps that she gives, and the 10 steps that I say are great follow-up. So just in closing, I just would like to share a little bit of a personal information on this vulnerability. And as some of you know, I just recently had a surgery, and it was originally scheduled for January. And my family came out to be with me because I didn't share a lot of this, but because I have a pre-existing lung condition, they'd given me a 50-50 chance of coming through the surgery. So this surgery wasn't, how do I put this? It wasn't necessary for my living a life, but it was necessary for me to stay on the lung transplant list. So it was this terrible circle I was in, where if I didn't do it, I was off the transplant list, which means fine, I'd keep going the way I'm going, but I wouldn't have the life I dreamed of. I wouldn't have that intention. So I had to look at it very carefully and say, am I ready to say goodbye to everything I know for the chance of what I want? And I'd always taught my kids, I don't want to stay where I am. I always want to go forward. So in January, it was a half an hour before I was going to surgery, and they called it off because there wasn't room in the ICU. And the doctor called me and he said, we can't keep you safe. So we decided to call it off. So it was moved 2 months. So I was very relieved. I've got to tell you, I crawled into bed and I'm almost giggling because I'm like, yes, I get to see the end of Ted Lasso and I get all these other things that was interesting. I thought I bought 8 weeks. So it comes up to the next day, and I'm like, okay, I did all the sadness. I said all my goodbyes to family and friends and told them how I felt about them and shared all my things with my children. And I thought, I'm not going to go through another 8 weeks of the dying tour. Like, this is ridiculous. Because as much as I have great intentions, when they kept saying 50-50, it's a scary thing. And I'd never had a surgery in my life. So it was like, So I decided to go through the next 8 weeks, not repeating what I'd been through before the last surgery. So I had fun. I felt free. I felt like I could do all these things, and I had such an outpouring of love from family and friends, and it was amazing. I was in a love fest for like 8 weeks. And I went through the surgery, came out of surgery, The ICU doctor was there and he said, you know what, you're doing fantastic, we don't need you. You're going up to the ward. Went up to the ward, was out within a week. I'm doing very well, thank you. But I faced it. I faced that vulnerability and I will never go through that again. But anyone that comes to me now and says they have to make a choice, and it's this difficult, I'll be able to say, me too. Thank you.